What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we are going to be talking about Skull Island Season 1, Episode 5, Doggone It. What a weird title. It has nothing to do with the episode. Anyways, that's what we're talking about. This show's ramping up in a big way. I liked this one a lot. We are on the road to the conclusion and it feels nice. Some of the earlier episodes were a little uneventful. This one was not. Okay, again, spoiler warning for Skull Island Season 1 Episode 5. If you haven't seen it, go check it out before we do this video because I'm going to be talking spoilers, but I'm not going to be giving a plot-by-plot, beat-by-beat breakdown of the episode. I'm simply going to be covering some moments that I have some notes on. Alright, jumping into it. Finally, Charlie noticed how bad Mike is doing. I mean, oh my god, this guy is dying over here and nobody noticed for multiple episodes now. But how did those guards not hear them talking and standing up just right next to them in the grass? I did love the little joke when both groups realized that they were being used as bait. I thought that was a lot of fun. Although the fact that I'm starting to like these random soldiers now makes it especially apparent that nobody has names in this show. Why does nobody get named in this show? Nobody has names ever. I think it's kind of weird. But I did like that joke. Good mountains, good background, very Skull Island looking, even though that red forest still feels out of place to me. The rest of it looks just like the Skull Island I know and love. I would really love if Legendary would put out a map of Skull Island updated with where all these locations take place because I just can't visualize it. I'm assuming my headcanon is that pretty much this entire show takes place on the west coast of the island because we know that east is best, west is worst. We know that most of the stuff we go visit in Kong Skull Island is not on the west of the island. The furthest west we ever make it is the Boneyard, which I believe is more central. So I'm wondering, where does this all take place? I'm thinking this whole show has to be taking place on the west side of the island. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second because that's where I think the temple is as well, but I do like the terrain that we see. It looks Skull Island enough to me. Nice action sequence here at the start of the episode, although it's much shorter lived than I would have expected. And we have seen in the trailer that Dog eats some dudes, so apparently these guys are not going to be on the right foot with Annie and Dog, especially after this episode. Rest in peace, Dog. That Phoenix got him snatched right up, which makes me think the Phoenix is trained. I think the Phoenix might have been trained by Kong to bring sacrifices to him because I think he might be hungry. Does that mean Kong ate Mustache from the other episode? I don't know. That's a pretty ambiguous thing, but a very morally questionable thing for Kong to have done. I think Mike was in the right for splitting up from Charlie here. I think Mike made the right call. I don't think he should have brought Charlie into this group that he thought was dangerous. We also got a lot of big reveals in this episode, such as learning that Irene is the woman that Mike and Hero were talking about in episode 2. I'm glad we got that paid off because I forgot about that, which means this show is consistent in telling its story. It'll probably hold up pretty well on rewatches for that reason, but it's interesting knowing that she's the one who hired them in the first place. What even is that thing that the soldiers are moving? What is it, an egg? It doesn't look like a spore or anything. It looks like maybe an egg. I at first thought it was going to be one of the heads of one of the snapping plants from the previous episode, but it isn't, so I'm thinking it's going to be an egg of some sort. I'm not sure. Where did all the tents come from as well? And also, they have tranquilizers now. Didn't they say they needed those to get airdropped to them? Did we just never see that? Did that just get glazed over? The native spooking Charlie was a great scene. I love the native design. I like the way she doesn't speak, but instead gestures. That's very Iwi of her. I like how fast she is. She's got a great presence in this scene. A really good introduction to this character. Very intriguing and mysterious. I'm assuming it's a she just because we have seen a female native in the trailers. Does this imply that there's a relationship between her and the bird? I'm not really sure. She seems to be aware of it and know what it wants. Kind of feel like she's the one who baited Charlie out there to get snatched by the bird. Is the bird obedient to her? Is it obedient to Kong? Is it trying to feed Kong? Is she trying to feed things to Kong using it? I have no idea. Many questions I have a feeling will be answered in the next episode or so. When Charlie gets snatched and they're flying in, the mountain range looks great. Again, very Kong Skull Island. I like to think that maybe this big mountain is the big mountain from Kong Skull Island. Maybe we're just seeing a different side of it or the underneath of it now. I'm not sure. So Cap notices instantly how bad Mike is doing, which makes me think that Mike just has as the worst friends in the world. But here's where we learn that Mike and Hiro were hired by Irene to find Skull Island, and that's what they were doing out there in the first place, and they just didn't tell Cap because he didn't want funding from outside sources. Turns out she already sent people out on a different ship first, and they discovered Annie's Island, which is why Irene's crew is out there, because they were there going to pick up Annie from Annie's Island. Clearly they're looking for Annie because I think it's very obvious at this point. They almost state it in this episode that Irene is Annie's mom, which is kind of a theory I've been building over the last couple episodes, but I just didn't mention because I kind of thought I might be just wildly wrong, but I have kind of been picking up on clues that they might have some sort of connection to each other, and it seems that this is Annie's mom. But then why the soldiers to gather materials, and why the secrecy? What is going on? I still think Irene is a bad guy. I still think Irene probably works for like Monarch. I'm still gonna stick on the Monarch side because I don't think Apex is very realistic for this show. I'm gonna stay on the Monarch side, and I'm thinking that this just might be like we're seeing a darker side of Monarch than we've ever seen before. That's gonna be my big theory. That's gonna be what I'm gonna guess the plot twist of season 1 is. Would feel weird to have an entry of the Monsterverse that doesn't address Monarch at all. That would feel strange. So that's my guess. I like how they give extra weight and emotion to Hiro's death after all these episodes. I also think Cap is such a great dad. What a good guy. He's just looking out for Mike. I loved that scene. So where is this foggy area? I'm thinking it's going to be on the west side of Skull Island where we've explored less. Maybe we're going to the giant mountain in the middle of the island, but maybe not. The only reason I think that is because it's got a giant face carved into the mountain, which might be the Skull Mountain from Kong Skull Island, even though the design has changed quite a bit. This show is also the show that portrays the Monsterverse Kong with black fur rather than brown fur, which is just a crazy thing to mess up. So if they're going to mess that up, then I could see them also messing up the fact that the face doesn't look like that in Kong Skull Island, but I don't know. Maybe this isn't that. Maybe it's a brand new spot. I don't know. But it's strange because there is this enormous Hollow Earth-sized temple located on the island. Why don't the Iwi live here? Why don't they visit it? So I'm thinking that it's going to be on the west side of the island because it's going to be on the more dangerous side. That's why I'm thinking that they've got a big moat around it, as I'll talk about later. I think this is in a very hostile, dangerous place. I don't think that humans can really coexist here. I think that's why this is all isolated, and that's why it's kind of in ruins. I like the bond between Dog and Charlie in this episode. I think it develops very naturally. And the little nose touch that they do reminds me of Weaver and Kong, which was then referenced by Godzilla King of the Monsters with Madison and Mothra, whereas in and of itself, the Weaver-Kong moment was a reference to Jurassic Park. So I think it's a fun moment. I wonder how smart Dog is in this episode because he clearly has an understanding of some English. If the average dog is of the intelligence of somewhere around a 2-year-old child, then I'm thinking maybe Dog in this show is somewhere around a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old. I think he's got a very basic understanding of human concepts. He's obviously grown up with Annie for many years, so he's heard her speak English since he's a puppy. I'm thinking that maybe the two of them have worked out some basic commands and training. He clearly knows her name. But I think a lot of the stuff in this episode where it seems like he's understanding Charlie is just kind of the viewer filling in the gaps because Dog is just kind of stone-faced blank, not reacting to much of what Charlie says in this episode. Charlie's like teaching him how to climb, and Dog's just standing there looking at him, and it doesn't take until Charlie literally gets on the thing to show Dog physically what to do that Dog starts to figure it out. Also, he's not really teaching Dog to climb, but more of inspiring him to do so because we saw Dog just one episode ago climb in and out of the ant pit, so we know Dog can climb walls. That's not a new reveal. Also, he climbed a tree earlier as well. Dog grew on me a lot in this episode, especially the scene where they're climbing down the tower together. I thought that was a great scene, although I wish they had kept up with the more consistent animation details of showing the claws sink into the rocks. They only show it some of the time. I wish they showed it all the time because otherwise it looks like he's just kind of gliding down nothing. Kong's reveal here is awesome and all. I thought it was a really great moment. This is the best Kong stuff we've had in the show so far, but what is up with the giant monkey bars? I think they're great. They're really cool, but they're very unrealistic and impractical. It is a nice Godzilla vs. Kong moment and shows where Kong learned to do monkey bars in the first place because he does do it in Godzilla vs. Kong. But how are these things built? How are they structurally that sturdy? And how do they still hold up after all this time? That place is ancient and looks unattended to. Who built this thing? Was it the Kongs from the Hollow Earth? Did they come up and build this thing as their first course of action on Skull Island? It just seems strange to me. The music in this scene was awesome, however. I really liked it. So does Kong live in this temple or does he live on the mountain we saw him on Kong Skull Island? This temple kind of feels out of place for the Monsterverse for me. It feels like this should have been something we would have known about by now, but the fact that it's just turning up makes me go, what? Although there are ruins on Skull Island, specifically around the Iwi village, so maybe there has been a more advanced human society that used to live on this island before the skull crawlers invaded. They are an invasive species after all. That very well could be the case. If that's the case, this is very King Kong 2005 with the ruins and the jungle temple and the history that used to be but can no longer be anymore because of the dangers of the island. have gotten too strong. In that case, I kind of am into it, but I just wish it had a bit more setup and context in the MonsterVerse. Kong's temple does remind me a lot of the Godzilla temple that we see in the Hollow Earth. It also reminds me of some of the stuff we see in that King Kong animated series cartoon, but it does have some connections to the Godzilla temple from the Hollow Earth in that both of them featured statues of their specific deity standing as a humanoid creature, although it makes way more sense for Kong to do it. It's also of a similar size and scale. I like how they depict Kong here as a sad and lonely creature. That is something that carries over from Kong Skull Island very well and shows that he does have a consistent personality throughout all these movies. But I'm not sure why he would have such a personal connection to a small little artifact, this little necklace. I understand that he might have a connection to a human that used to wear it, but it feels strange for him to have some sort of sentimental value attached to an inanimate object. That's a little bit too much anthropomorphizing. Is that the right word? I don't know. I think that's right. I also think they're still drawing Kong way too small. I mean, when his fingers interacting with this necklace, they're still drawing the 50-foot King Kong. They're not drawing the 200-foot that he should be. I mean, if this takes place right before Skull Island, the birth of Kong, he's supposed to be like 230 feet, right? Seems strange. Maybe the hole around this temple is to keep skull crawlers out. It might be a moat built meant to keep skull crawlers out. That's going to be my guess. I'm also going to guess that that one native we saw is not going to be an Iwi. I think she's going to be the last descendant of whoever was living in this temple when they built the moat. Whoever was the last people to occupy this temple, that's going to be my guess, as she's the last descendant of that tribe. Because again, she has Iwi markings, but they're of a different color than the normal Iwi, which makes me think, going back to the Skull Island concept art book, she's going to be from a different tribe. Although once again, as I've acknowledged in other videos, village elders of the Iwis also wear blue. So it could be some sort of status thing, some sort of class ranking that they do. The dynamic between Cap and Irene is still great. Still enjoyed their screen time together in this episode. I like the way that she calls him out on the fact that he's just such a genuinely good guy that he can't even really tell a lie properly. One question I do have though is, if Irene is Annie's mother, how does Annie not recognize her even a little? I mean, clearly Annie was old enough to remember her dad by the time she got stranded, so it seems a little strange that she wouldn't recognize her mother unless her mom was just a bad mom in life before and was an absent mother before she got stranded as well. That could also be the case. I like how you can see the veins on Mike's neck before it's even addressed in this episode or relevant to the plot, and this flying whale at the end of the episode was fantastic. It is a very Japanese type visual. I've seen that depicted in a lot of Japanese art, so that's really cool, but it doesn't move like it was thrown or launched. It really does move like it's flying, so I didn't love that. I also didn't love how it was so perfectly aimed that it literally nailed Kong's temple right where Kong was at that moment. How did the squid know that Kong was there? It seems weird that the squid would even know Kong was there in the first place. Although I do love the scene itself. It had a lot of great tension, and I like whenever this show goes for mystery, intrigue, and suspense over shock and awe, so I appreciated that. And overall, I thought the scene was really well executed, although it did raise a lot of questions. I like Kong's response to it as well. Like, it really sets up the rivalry between these two very well. I like how Kong does the Godzilla vs. Kong roar at the monster and then pounds the ground. Also, Kong's roar echoing and bellowing out over the whole island again is a very King Kong 2005 thing to happen. But yeah, he does the ground pound that he does in Godzilla vs. Kong as well. That's kind of his intimidation display, other than the beating the chest. That's his other one. And then the episode ends with Mike on the ground dying. No, I don't think he's gonna die. I think if Mike's on the ground dying this early in the show, then he'll be fine. If this had happened in like the last episode, my man gonna die. If this had happened in the second to last episode, I could still see him dying. But we've got like 3 left or 4 left or something, so Mike's gonna be fine. He'll survive this. I'm sure that Irene and all of the soldiers will have some sort of medication for him, and they'll get him back on his feet in no time. Alright, that'll do for this one. So far, I think that was probably my favorite episode of the show. I thought it had the best personal dynamics. It had a lot of good action. Definitely it gets a lot of bonus points because it had the most Kong. I thought it had lots of interesting lore setup, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is one of my favorites for sure, if not my favorite, but this one's right up there alongside the first episode as ones that I've really enjoyed in this show. I want to give a huge thank you to all my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below. Through that, you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. And it really does go a long way towards supporting this channel and making sure I can keep making videos like this for you guys. Alright, that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.